Call the meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, October 1st. It's the first meeting of October for Sylvania Township Board of Trustees. And I'm calling the meeting to order at 5 o'clock. And Dave, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Genowine? Here. Mr. Mahoney? Here. Mr. Crandall?
Here.
SIMKO? Here.
Could we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of October 1st, our regular meeting. September 17th. I'll move approval.
Second. Mr. Genowine?
Going to abstain, I wasn't present.
Yes. Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes. Any additions or changes to the agenda?
Nothing tonight.
Okay, thank you. We got a tough decision tonight, and we've got a lot of good and reasons on both sides of this issue. We asked the county not to speak tonight. We heard them about I think second meeting of August. If you spoke at that meeting, and I'm only trying to limit things because we're going to get out of here about 7 o'clock tonight, something like that. So we set up in half an hour, and if you didn't speak to us before, I will ask you to speak again. If you hear a comment that we've already heard, honestly, we don't need to hear it more than one time. And if I give you this sign, it means we've heard that. Try to move on to something else. If I go like this, your 3 minutes are up, you're cut off. And I'll be watching my two colleagues here. And if we all agree we've heard that, it isn't that we don't want to hear it again, but we want to be sure we stick with our agenda as much as possible. If I do that, man, I'll be awful lucky, but we're going to try. And we've got about 5:15 to 5:40 set up for public comments on the dispatch thing. Okay, I think we'll open that up and the people sign, Dave. This is not agenda. Oh, here's the agenda. Thank you. Bruce Bomber. Bruce, I don't think we heard from you before, did we? Go ahead, sir.
Well, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak. May I ask questions? Or should I provide them?
We normally don't debate at this time, we just want to hear your comments, but certainly if we have a question, either of the trustees.
Sounds good. So I'm concerned about the consolidation, and I think mainly my concerns are I don't really understand what the benefits will be, but I see significant downside. Now, I understand that there is potential tax savings, but I'm not certain what amount that would be and when we would realize that and in what sort of a quantity it would be. I do see that consolidating with a very large urban dispatch has the potential of diluting out the importance of Sylvania Township, and I don't understand that we can't do a better job locally. I understand that there is a backup system in place for large natural disasters, and I certainly feel like once it's done, it cannot be undone. It would require reestablishing an entire system that is now functioning very well. So my concern is that it's not in the best interest of the township to go forward at this time with the consolidation. I also would like to know to what extent the public has sounded off on this in a positive sense, and then also what have you heard in terms of negative responses?
Well, we've had about 25 emails, we've attended 12 meetings, not all of us together, but with our administration, and I would say we have at least a dozen questions we've written the county, they've written us back, and those have all been distributed. our consensus opinion is that's what we're doing tonight. So I don't think I heard anything that we haven't, there's issues on both sides of this. I don't know if you have a comment, but I appreciate your comments.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Bruce.
Kevin, is it Steinman? Kevin?
Hi, Kevin Steinman. I'm a township resident, live on Barleyton Circle. Also speaking on the PSAP consolidation issue. My biggest concern is we're actually taking a step backwards if we do this consolidation, meaning public safety-wise. Right now, under our current 911 system, we have public safety answering points in Oregon, Maumee, Sylvania Township, Sylvania City, and the 911 building. That's designed on purpose. That way, if a large-scale incident happens in, let's say, Oregon, for example, out here in Sylvania Township, you can still call 911 for grandpa having a heart attack, or your child choking, or somebody breaking into your house. In a consolidated setting, when all 911 calls ring into one location, and a large-scale incident happens anywhere in the county, that center will be overwhelmed. So, if there's a large-scale incident in Oregon, and out here in Sylvania, grandpa having a heart attack, your child choking, somebody breaking into your house, and you try to call 911, you're going to get a busy signal, or you're going to get an on-hold message. Because the county's proposal calls for 9 call takers. I'm sorry, but you're going to have more than 9 911 calls during a large-scale incident. That's the bottom line, public safety. People live in Sylvania Township for higher public service. Not because it's cheaper to live out here, but because of better service. Bottom line.
Certainly aware of that argument, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Stephen Lafferty?
I did speak a couple of weeks ago. I'll be very brief.
Thank you, sir.
I know that you've done your research. You've done your homework. I'm hoping that there'll be no surprises. Unlike Affordable Care Act, I'm hoping that we are not going to go ahead and pass this or turn this down one way or the other without getting all the information. And one of the things that I don't have an answer for yet, and I'm not sure if you do or not. The latest draft dated August 9th mentioned that the county was also willing to answer our 10-digit lines, each jurisdiction. And I'm wondering if that is still the case. I think the last time Matt spoke, I think he mentioned that some of the area departments were thinking about retaining a certain number of staff. I'm not sure whether that was for the 10-digit lines or not. Do you have that answer? We've had correspondence with the county, but as a board, we'll have that discussion with you this evening. We're aware, I think, of all the pros and cons, and I think I can speak for the board. There's good arguments on both sides of this decision. So it's hard for any of us to, if we answer your questions, just one of the trustees' opinion. That's what our purpose tonight is, to see if we can come together, sir. Matt can't answer a question tonight, I take it.
Well,
I mean, that's a pretty important question. That's.
There's a very clear answer to that.
well, let's
I mean, this isn't a trick question, I'm just trying to.
we don't want to get into debate.
Oh, no, I will not debate.
We've kept our staff
I will not, I
pretty
just
busy.
want to know, one way or the other.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so, you want me to do
Is that okay with you guys?
Yeah, that's fine.
Keep it short.
Sure. So I can give you the exact page number the answer is on. It is on pages 13 and 14. It has been in the draft for a number of months that all 10-digit and 911 numbers from all jurisdictions would be consolidated into a single entity. The projections on the 10-digit numbers were provided by your Police Department Chief Long, provided that to us, I would say probably in the June timeframe. It's been consolidated together in the updated drafts. The total number of calls will increase from 410,000 just for 911 calls, increased to 669,000 countywide to accommodate for those 10 digits. And you'll see if you look back at drafts that the number of staff also increased to account for that call volume. Thank you.
Okay, that answered that question. That number Matt just mentioned averages out to about 75 calls an hour. When you add the 911 calls and the area's 10-digit calls, that's an average per hour. Now consider during the middle of the night, 3 a.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning, let's just say, those 10-digit calls are very few and far between. That means that to get an average of 75 calls per hour, you're going to have hours where you're looking at probably 150 calls or more per hour with 9 personnel. Those 9 personnel, if I read this right, of course, would be answering 911 calls first, as they should. But there are also a lot of 10-digit calls where calls for service are coming in. And I do not want to see those calls ring and be answered by answering voicemail and have people sit on hold for 20 minutes trying to file their reports or ask questions that are important to them that they deserve a quicker response. The other point I wanted to bring up, and it dealt with mutual aid. I think it's page 5, maybe page 7, I can't remember, but it's really in the report. But one thing that's mentioned is dispatchers will be able to see jurisdictional units. In other words, police units that might be close to the Sylvania-Toledo line or Sylvania Township-Toledo line, or fire apparatus or rescue squads that might be closer in proximity to a call, where a dispatcher can then dispatch that closest unit to an emergency call, even though it may not be within the jurisdiction of, say, Sylvania Township. In other words, Sylvania Township Fire Station number 3, as you know, is at Monroe and Whiteford. That's 1 mile from the Franklin Park Mall. 1 mile, Westfield or whatever it's called today. Station 23 is about 2.5 miles away if they're in-house. Station 25 is probably a good 2.5 miles away. Those are the 2 first in for the mall. Does this mean that dispatchers will see that Sylvania is available and start sending Sylvania units into the city of Toledo for fire and rescue protection?
Well, we're getting time, sir.
Well, it's a very good question to me, only because, and it should be to you, because it's the Sylvania City and Sylvania Township tax dollars are funding the fire department.
Believe me, we know that, sir.
Oh, I'm sure you do. But do we have the resources to be sending Station 3 to the mall, or Station 2 to McCord and Door Street or wherever on an injury accident when they're only, 1 mile away?
That happens somewhere else.
Well, we have mutual aid, but...
That's not mutual aid.
Yeah, well, I know, but your time limit, 3 minutes.
Oh, I'll take it. I'm good. I'd sure like an answer, though. And I'd like to know, what your thoughts are.
Well, I'm sure you'll hear that as we discuss it.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Warren.
Good evening, gentlemen. I have not studied this proposal in a lot of detail. I've lived in the township since 1956, and over those many years, and in my old age, I've had to rely on the response of the Sylvania EMS Fire Department many times, and their response has been excellent. We have an excellent police department and an excellent fire department and an excellent bunch of dispatchers, and I am of the gut feeling that if this change is made, our response time is going to deteriorate somewhat. So all I can say, gentlemen, is if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce.
James Crosby?
I'm here.
I hope so, you signed in.
I did, Mr. Crandall.
Bud Crosby, James Crosby, 4500 block of Westbourne. Gentlemen, have a very important decision here to make right now, this evening. I'm looking forward to hear the discussion that takes place within the board. I read through the report, the most recent draft, and there's lots of good aspects of it. I'm not totally convinced it's the right time for that at the county-wide level. I see the potential cost savings. I don't see any reference of what that money is going to be, how that money saved will be utilized in the future. But one of the things within the report that I saw, and I know from personal experience that dedicated fire dispatchers would be beneficial. Even here locally, it seems as if the fire department has taken a back seat with dispatching services available and attention to what's going on in fire grounds. Happily so, equipment changes have come to be that everyone is operating on the same hardware type of system. They can see what everyone else is and what they're doing currently. They can't necessarily dispatch them, but they see the availability of resources and they're able to group together communication groups so that everyone can talk safely. And because communication is totally important when something bad is going on. There's certain aspects when I read through the draft that I thought were very beneficial, but I don't see it necessarily a consolidation of regionalism on a countywide level. What struck me was I see a room for improvement with Sylvania Township joining forces with the city of Sylvania. I saw the numbers that they had, that maybe the consolidation would make sense for Sylvania Township locally, more so than it would be on a county basis. What I saw here, and the impression, this is my own gut feeling on it. You know, the saying about lipstick on a pig. Now, I'm not saying this is a pig, but it sure does seem to be a bit of lipstick, and it wants to be kissed quick. This whole process was claimed to be stakeholders coming forward in the beginning of 2018. I've seen some of the progress that government makes through decision-making. And this seems to be on a fast track for whatever reasons. It may be the best and greatest thing. I'm not entirely convinced of that. But I think it should give you gentlemen pause to consider all aspects of this. Once this decision is made and goes forward, you're not coming back to what we currently have in any fashion, shape, or form. And the potential savings that they proposed to the township was mentioned previously that citizens will not have access to a local non-emergency type number for general questions. When you looked at the numbers presented in the draft report, those types of calls are significantly more than priority 1 911 rescue calls, without a doubt. Dispatching is an important job. It takes certified and trained people to do that. It's definitely a challenge, and it goes underappreciated by most people. I look forward to hearing your comments amongst yourself and how you come to the decisions and consensus of this board. Thanks.
Thank you. You're right, the time frame was pretty tight, but I think we had originally 30 days, but we're now going on 3 months, and Matt's been very accommodating to us, as the commissioners have, everybody's asked for additional time, not just Sylvania Township. It takes a lot of time to go through and get all the background on this, and I don't know what you feel about 1 month, but that seemed pretty tight. And we're now we're entering our 4th month here on this issue. And I appreciate your time. We're actually a little ahead of schedule. But we're going to try to reach this decision in 2 resolutions. The first resolution is whether to support this or not support it. And then the second resolution will be who of the board here will represent Sylvania Township as this gets consolidated or not consolidated. In fact, I don't know if we have to name a rep. I think we do, regardless of our decision. The way I understand, is that correct, Matt?
Yes.
Yeah, so we've got to name somebody, but we're not sure which way we're going. With that, I'll open up comments. Would one of my colleagues like to start, or do you want me to start? It's up to you guys.
I know I was late, but is there room for any more comment?
Sure, we've got time, sir.
Okay.
But I'll need your name and address.
Sign it on, sure.
Oh, I'm sorry, we got it then, we don't need...
No,
Is
it
it
came
up
in
here?
late, so
I
we
was
put it...
late.
Oh, here.
I didn't get off work in time.
Oh, that's okay.
I'll bring it over.
That's good, thank you, sir. 3 minutes is the limit, thank you.
I'll try to keep it short.
That's okay.
It's been a long day anyways. My name is Brian Nelson. I live over 9053 Stony Brook, and I'm in Sylvania Township. And like many of the residents, and I wish we saw more of it here, we have a lot of concerns about diluted services. I mean, I'd like to appreciate we've got a fine police department, first responders, and we want to thank everybody that's here that showed up. But if we can't get them there, and if we can't get them there with a local dispatcher, we're losing services. I hear about cost savings, but every time we see something about cost savings, that never comes to fruition. We're just moving dollars. I don't see any benefit to the community here, and it kind of feels like Sylvania annexing all of our housing and residents to gain tax base. Now it sounds like Lucas County wants our 911 dollars, and it feels like a money grab. It doesn't feel like we're going to have any enhanced services. It doesn't sound to anybody that talks to the people on the front line, or at least the ones that I have, that there's going to be any improvement. And I think that's the bottom line version that we need to consider. Yes, there may be a time in the future where it's good for us, but now it's not that. And if nothing else, if you decided you wanted to go forward, I would at least want to put that before the voters and see how they feel about it. That's all. Thanks, Brian.
No other comments, we'll start the discussion. I'll start if it's all right with you two.
Please.
It is a tough decision both ways. Money's come up a lot, and none of this will surprise the county. Matt, you know, you've talked to all of us individually. The savings, and Matt analyzed the 911 calls. He didn't analyze all the calls. It's part of their system, but that's not in there. And certainly the costs, in my mind, are not, there is savings, but not near what we think they're going to be. And we really don't know until all this comes together. So, and we all have different criteria, but cost is not my issue. What I think is positive about this is I think the state and the country, there's no doubt, what I've read and found out, everybody's moving this way. Eventually, when I first came on board 6 years ago, I heard that we were going to be forced to consolidate. And that's not happened yet, but there's certainly a report, and there's certainly that feeling. I do think this is a better system for backup of the first responders. And I do think the training is pretty good here to bring all these departments together. I appreciate the county there's nobody losing a job here, but I can also appreciate what a change that is for our dispatchers. In fact, the disruption of our dispatchers is my biggest negative here. We also, in this plan, it's a sharing of resources for dispatch services. And if you look at it countywide, some of the townships are underwriting. It's been underwritten for a long time. Sylvania Township's not one of them. And Bruce Williams, a former trustee, we've paid for these services, our taxpayers, for a long time. And we have excellent dispatch services and safety services. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to be forced to consolidate. But I really feel the disruption of our dispatchers is a negative. I also think that we've been given one option here, and that is to consolidate to one operation. You can make an argument that way. I understand that part of it. You can also make an argument that we should have two. That's in the state figures, Matt. And we're not saying anything here that surprises Matt. We've all been talking to him and trying to come up with the right decision. And Cincinnati, Columbus, and Cleveland all have two dispatch units. Dayton, I understand, is voluntary. I wasn't able to go down, but I know Mr. Genuine took time and went down with our police chief to Dayton, so we're pretty familiar with that operation. And that's one of my concerns here. I think consolidation, we're going to be forced to do it, but I'm not sure that one is the answer. I'm also very concerned, as has been pointed out, that most of our calls are not 911. Most of our calls are 10-digit numbers. And while I understand the county can handle that, I'm worried about the response time for those types of calls. That's ice and snow control, trees down, all types of calls that we get. And I know they're going to be answered by a live person, I know that much, but I'm not sure what our response time will be, and I don't want it to be that somebody didn't give the call to us, because I look at that as our service going down for our taxpayers. But I do think, and when I look out 10 years or so, we're going to be forced to do this, and I would rather see us try to work together. So my support would be that we move ahead on consolidation, but I'd like to, somebody's got to convince me that two is not the way to go. I know you've got equipment, we've asked that question, backing up one operation, but I don't know that we have the dispatching services we have now where we can reroute calls. So I don't know what that means, but I can support consolidation to go to two. And I think we have 6 now, Matt, is that correct?
Yes.
So I would support it going to 2. Neil, John, who wants to go next?
Last week I went to the Sylvania Township's morning meeting with the dispatchers, and I could just tell in their eyes, it's like, oh man, this is a big change, it's a big issue, got a big problem. And, I went there because I wanted to see in their eyes how difficult of a decision it is for me too, to be where we're at today. As I said at that meeting that morning, I said, be careful what you wish for. And what I meant by that, and I'll say it again, was not once in our lifetime have we as a township had an opportunity to tell government how to run this operation. We have the majority votes. It's not a county thing, it's not a city thing. We have the majority votes to make this a fully operational, with a lot of say, hopefully, from the dispatchers to make sure that this thing runs the way we want to run from a township and a city. If you look at the water, how that's all set up, it's still, the water, there's no votes out here. All these cities are voting for water and everything's all hunky-dory, and the city still has the votes. So the city still tells these cities and townships how to run their water. This isn't going to be the case here. We actually have a seat at the table, which has never been presented before in any government of anywhere in this area. So we have a year and a half before it be implemented, maybe closer to 2 years, I guess, probably closer to a year and a half. That's a lot of time, because I have the same concerns as John does. I'm worried about the, non-call, non-emergency issues. I know Paul's brought that up. Paul and I have talked, we're blue in the face about this in a good way, good conversations. This is what it's all about, good management, elected officials, relationships, and as I said that Thursday morning, I'm in a no-win spot here, okay? I get the fire department that thinks it's a great idea, okay? The fire departments, I get the police that think it's a bad idea. Okay, so how do I try to manage this? Well, we've got a year and a half to try to make it work, and so if you were to ask me at this juncture, I'm in support of some type of consolidation. Not a bad idea on the second one. I've never given that a whole lot of thought. Matt, would that be open for conversations in the next year and a half during this process?
We can have conversations, but that would be different than the addendum that's being put forward to vote in this round. So, and fiscally, when you do that, we can run the numbers on it, but fiscally it doesn't really work. The problem is, Andy, we have to figure out, those ideas have been discussed for 19 years, and the problem is, and this is no disrespect, but which suburb gets the second dispatch becomes the, it's a little bit of, it's easy to say, oh, here, we can figure that out. Well, 19 years history will tell you that Maumee, Savannah Township, Savannah, Oregon have never been able to figure that out. It's a very challenging political question. So those are, I think, the practical challenges of going to a two PSAP system.
You good?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for letting me speak.
Go ahead.
You know, I look at the technology piece with this, I mean, the same kind of, as we're looking at the TARDA issue and things and the regionalism points of view of our area, you know, the technology is going to drive this area and dispatch more than anything else in the coming years. And I think of the financial burden that puts on a small community like Savannah Township. And again, it's hard to take this out of the picture where, you know, we're not getting annexed and things. And if we're down 400 homes in the next 5 years or so, certainly our dispatch services are going to suffer. And all the examples of getting inundated with calls to one center, well, how do you think we're handling it now with 2 and 3 people on staff? You know, it just, I think the fact that you've got more people on staff and more resources, you know, you're definitely going to have a more professional staff and better trained, and, you know, I think it's the way to go, in my opinion.
I'd like to clarify one point, Matt. When I said there ought to be 2, it doesn't have to be Savannah Township. We know that Maumee dispatches for Ottawa Hills, and you told me, I think, we can practically do anything. So I'm not saying it has to be us, but I do think there's an argument for 2. That's still consolidation. And if it goes well, and if the board of directors, by the way, there's no elected officials on that. That's our first responders, the board of directors for us. And if they came back to me and said, one makes sense and here's why, I certainly would hear that out. Of what I've heard so far, I'm not convinced. The regional thing, John, I get so disappointed there because we've been talking about regional water for 40 years. And there's agreement now, and I give everybody credit for that, but we're not going to know for another 40 years if that's going to work or not. That's, in my mind, that's too long. And when you talk about annexation, no 2 communities, and this is not a shot at city council, because we have one member here, but Savannah and Savannah Township have done a lot of things together. I won't bore you with the things that we've worked together on to give the citizens the best deal we can. But then when we get done with regional water, our citizens have paid a premium to be on the city water, and what do? They force them to annex. So we've got to learn as a region to be able to talk to each other and work these things out. Because believe me, as Toledo goes, so goes our region. I wish we'd have had regional water 40 years ago. And we got another 40 years to go, and that'll help all of us if we get there. But I look at this as a regional problem, not the importance of water. I think I look at it like EMS. When that first started, and Chief, you weren't the chief then, but all the fire departments were upset. I think we'd say today, looking back on EMS, the county and the fire departments have worked together, and we really have a good EMS system. So that's my shot at it. I don't know if we can make a motion here or not.
And we're still not at the table with the regional water thing. I mean, and that is a big disappointment. I mean, initially, there were reports that, you know, annexation was going to be off the table with the regional, and no one even has consulted us or asked our opinion of that, and yet we're one of the larger communities, and it's disappointing. And it is nice that we do have a seat at this table, and that we are part of the decision-making process. So I thank the county for that.
I give the county credit for that, and I give the county credit for the EMS. And Matt, you've been very responsive to us. Doesn't mean I agree with you, as you obviously know. But I still think consolidation has got to be addressed, and personally, I'm not convinced we can go to one. It may turn out that way, but I don't know how you two feel. I'd like to, if you two think one over it, I'd like to see us try to be unanimous on this. I think it sends a good message. We're the second largest political subdivision in the county. We all know the easy decision is don't make one, but I think we gotta make the right decision here, in my mind. So what do you two think?
If you're asking me, I think, you know, if there's a little bit of, if the management board can get together, you know, not us as the elected officials that are appointing, but if there's something, a different cat mouse, we got a year and a half to look through, you know, we're gonna have a year and a half of this plan, there might be some massaging, there might be something, we're basically approving in theory consolidation, and for the most, the plan that's been presented. And it's just like anything, my plans at work change every day, you know, it's not like this is, I mean, and today, October 1st, it's kind of set in stone, but if we find a better mousetrap, which I fully intend to do, Oliver, you know, recently talked to the city of Sylvania about maybe doing some things for non-emergency calls. I mean, there's a lot of things there's a year and a half of things that we could try to massage. So if we're looking at the concept of consolidation, then that's what we vote on. I'm not sure I want to vote on your thoughts saying we need a second one. I'd like to see the professionals, when Ram and Long get into the meetings and start grinding this out, saying, hey, this is another plan, this is another thought, have you thought about this different mousetrap? I don't want to sit behind the pulpit here and act like I'm making a decision on people's lives here, and I want to make sure that we're squared away.
And I'm okay with that, Neil, but my bet is, I don't want Matt to come back and say, well, we've answered the question, it's one. It takes a little more time and study to convince me. I'm okay supporting this as long as it's consolidation. And let's say we don't decide whether it's one or two or voluntary. I'm okay with that. I don't want to tie their hands. Those 7 people are the professionals. They're going to be the board of directors. And that's my feeling. And maybe we can design a motion around that, I don't know.
Go ahead.
Well, if there's not good enough, why lunch?
Sir, this is not a debate, I'm sorry. And if,
Put it out there that you don't have to do it now, that's all.
well, what's an option? There's 4 options. Do nothing. There's an option of let's make it voluntary. Maybe you weren't here for that. And it could make it 2, you can make it 1. We understand that. We've been at this a while, so
It was good for Sylvania Township and the fire department.
we understand that. Believe me. We're the ones that have to do the levies, and if there's one thing I've heard in my 6 years on this board is our taxes are way too high out here. And you hear it all the time, and we all know that. We all know that.
Well, I'll offer Resolution 19-120, resolution to support the proposal by the Lucas County on merged and consolidated 911 services.
Second.
I'll call the roll. Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
No. And my reason for no is, I'm not convinced we can go to one operation at this time. Our next item on the agenda is to appoint a representative to the Council of Government. Is that the motion you need, Matt?
Yes.
Okay. And hopefully it's one of you two. I don't feel like, I have strong feelings on this, and I think we voted to, I think the board has voted to vote along in my mind.
Well, I've been on the 911 Commission, or the board, for the past several years, so I certainly don't mind representing the board in that fashion. So Neil, if you want to make the motion.
I'll make the motion. John Genowine the appointment representative to the 911 Planning Committee.
Okay, call for the vote.
Second.
Seconded, okay. Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes. Thank you. We can have a break here if you would like for about 5 minutes, if you don't want to stay for the rest of the meeting. You're certainly welcome to. Thank you. 46, and I'm proud to say we're ahead of schedule, so that's good. We'll start with the Road and Service Department, Rob Nash.
Good evening. I only have one item on the agenda, Resolution 19-119. I'm requesting authorization to offer conditional employment to a utility worker. The road department has went through 3 series of interviews. We hired our first employee that we were authorized in May, and this would be the additional employee that was requested and approved. His gentleman's name is Shane Fisher. He went through a full process of interviews and testing, and we recommend that we approve this for him.
Any questions?
No, I'll offer resolution 19-119, authorization to offer conditional employment to utility worker.
Second.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Rob, if you could, any questions for Rob? Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Chief Ron?
Hey, Paul.
Hey, just one resolution to, Resolution 19-111, to certify the dispatch eligibility list and authorize the hiring of one dispatcher, which is a replacement, it's not an addition. We're down one, so it's very straightforward.
I'll offer resolution 19-111, certify dispatch eligibility list and authorize hiring.
Second. Oh, I'm sorry.
You're good.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Any questions for the chief while he's up there? Good, thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Paul.
Administrator?
Good evening, trustees. There are 3 resolutions that I'm presenting tonight. The first being Resolution 19-116. As trustees are aware, myself and Director Onko have been closely examining various software programs utilized by the township. In particular, existing software programs have been reviewed in order to increase operating efficiencies and streamline established processes. Through this research, it was determined that the Employee Onboarding and Benefits Advisor Pro modules offered by Paycor would result in improved efficiencies, a streamlining of a variety of human resources tasks, and increased productivity. Importantly, these modules were selected given current satisfaction with Paycor's Payable software, which has been used by Sylvania Township for nearly 8 years, and with the understanding the new modules would complement existing efforts. Both modules will be used to receive employee input during the onboarding and benefits enrollment processes, and provide an expanded ability for reporting and data analysis in regards to employee benefits. Leveraging the existing relationship with Paycor, administration negotiated a 33% reduction from standard pricing on the monthly employee cost for the Benefits Advisor Pro module, a 26% reduction in standard implementation fees, and a 22% reduction in standard employee onboarding cost per new hire. The total estimated annual costs are anticipated to range between $8,000 and $8,500 and will be offset in part through the elimination of the Power DMS system, the services of which can be provided by the employee onboarding module at a cost savings of roughly $2,400 annually.
Further, it's expected the long-term value of efficiency gains would surpass any costs associated with the implementation and ongoing use of these modules. Thank you.
Any questions? Oliver?
I'll offer resolution 19-116 to execute the proposal and agreement for Paycor programs.
Second?
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Yes.
The second resolution presented tonight is 19-117 for the hiring of a part-time accounts payable specialist. As trustees are aware, Sylvania Township has previously filled the position of part-time accounts payable through Robert Half Staffing Services, with Patty Thomas serving in this role. As a reminder, Patty has approximately 10 years of previous municipal accounts payable experience and has performed well during her time with the township, demonstrating a strong work ethic and interest in cross-training and contributing to a team atmosphere. Authorization is being requested to hire Patty Thomas as a permanent part-time employee for the accounts payable position. Aside from the position contributing to the segregation of duties and ongoing operations, Patty has shown the willingness to pick up additional projects. On a housekeeping note, there would be a $1,000 conversion fee payable to Robert Half if this is approved. From a broader perspective, Township Administration has engaged all of the employees of the Fiscal Department toward cross-training efforts. Therefore, it's anticipated this position will be structured to provide periodic backup to other functions in a strategic and long-term fashion. Thank you.
Any questions for, I'll move resolution 19-117, hiring of a part-time accounts payable specialist.
Second?
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
Any questions for the administrator?
I don't.
You're off the hook.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Oliver.
Fiscal Officer, Mr. SIMKO.
Yes. I'm going to take, the agenda has them a little out of order here, but I'm going to start with resolution 19-112, transfer of appropriations, and we're basically moving money from some funds where it's not really needed as time has developed over the year into some funds that need some cash. It's just moving money around within various funds and accounts.
Offer resolution 19-112, transfer appropriations.
Second?
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
And resolution 113, and that is appropriation from unencumbered balances as follows to administration. It has to do with, most recently, with retirement payout, contracts relating to household pickup, and office equipment for computer purchases, OPWC loan payments to the amount a little over $4,600, and other expenses having to do with the payout to the senior center. Which is all wrapped up in resolution 113.
Is that 42,000 going to John Zeitler?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I'll move resolution 19-113, Township Appropriation from unencumbered balance.
Second?
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
And then call resolution 19-114 to reduce appropriations, and that basically having to do with auditor and treasurer fees and some payouts having to do with Lakata E. Sid.
I'll move resolution 19-114 to reduce appropriations.
Second?
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Genowine?
Yes.
And lastly, resolution 19-115, it's a transfer of funds, and it's to transfer $200,000, and the resolution says police fund, but it's actually, it goes to the fire fund. That was a
It says
misprint.
fire here. Oh, but up here, yeah.
Yes.
Offer Resolution 19-115, transfer of funds.
Second?
Commissioner Dunaway?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes.
That's all I have.
Okay, we'll move on to hearing of the public for non-agenda items. Gary Fox. And then I've got a E. Fox down.
Foxy?
No, it says E. Fox. Jim Crosby, James?
James Crosby, Bud Crosby, 4500 block of Westboro Road. I haven't yet heard any discussion about this, but I know that the township is considering a joint economic development district plan in association with the city. I have read the most recent draft that I haven't been able to get a hold of. I haven't yet seen all the examples and exhibits on the tab. I'm looking forward to hearing public discussion as this process moves forward, and if anything, whatever happens with that situation. So that is something that is of interest, and I think would be popular discussion amongst the township. There's just a couple of other things in passing. I'm always interested in the progress of the annexation situation. I know we brought attorneys to help deflect some of this annexation attempts. If we could see sometime what's the progress of that, even if there is no progress, communication that to the public I think would be beneficial. But I didn't mark this down, but hopefully you gentlemen are aware of a very serious situation that's going on within your departments. And it concerns the effectiveness of your EAP program. It's become questionable from a number of your employees about the effectiveness of the EAP program that you have contracted with and extended that contracted into the future. I would hope that you make contact with your department heads, who I'm sure are in discussion with their employees about the real effective benefits they're receiving from the EAP that you've contracted with.
Are you aware of that, Mr. Turner? I don't want to put you on the spot, but that's the first I've heard of that.
No, thank you for that. This is something that Director Onko and I have been working on. I believe that Harbor has been brought in as the EAP for the past 5 or 6 months. Abaso, I don't know, Janet, if you'd also like to speak on this and share your thoughts, but I believe that at the time this was presented to the board, there was a survey that was released to employees, and it's something that we do continue to receive feedback on and watch very closely, given the situations that employees find themselves in.
Would you, if it's okay with the other two, would you put that on your next staff meeting agenda?
Most certainly.
Apparently, Mr. Crosby feels there's some lack of communications there.
Yes, most definitely.
Follow up on the EAP.
Thank you.
A couple of things, Bud. I believe the annexation is going before the Lucas County Commissioners October 29th.
I think Bud knows that.
So I would encourage people to show up if they have an opinion or would like to express that to our county commissioners. Certainly, our hands are somewhat tied with that, but we're trying to see what we can do and put up the best defense the township can, so.
Well, obviously, that's not a decision.
Yeah.
This board, unfortunately, doesn't make those decisions.
Yes, sir, I'm not looking at any
But
discussion.
if you're looking for feedback, that'd be the place to get it.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Information is good.
yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bud.
Any questions for the fire department or the zoning department? We didn't hear from them tonight so far. Nothing?
I don't know.
Okay. I'll move to go into executive session at 6 o'clock for the purpose of collective bargaining and personnel.
Second.
Commissioner Dunaway?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes. Will anybody be joining us besides the administrator? Oh, Janet and,
Mr. Walters?
Jim Walter.
oh, Jim Walters, thank you. You could tell we didn't have a lot of...
Air conditioning isn't working at home?
Yeah, we're
making up for the next one.
Are we set there?
There you go.
Yes.
We okay, Sammy?
Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah.
Okay, I move we come out of executive session at 7:06.
Second?
Mr. Dunaway? Yes. Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes, and I move that we adjourn at 7:07.
No action being taken this evening?
Yes, no action.
Second?
Mr. Dunaway?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Crandall?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Paste that.